When there is no soda ash in dye, it acts very differently. You see, it creates like almost like a muddy kind of clay effect, gooey. So our first experiment, we're gonna keep our water. At this point, this is just a thermometer. You get them on Amazon very cheaply. You can see these on our website. And I just use this because water is a setting. Water is a variable that we can control. So I'm gonna measure it just to see where it's at so we know. And this picture is at 98 degrees. Okay, this is not 150 degrees. This is not ice dye water. And really, you're just gonna add it into your sprayer. This is well water, no additives, nothing. And that was maybe 200, maybe 2 liters in there. And I'm gonna remove this other one because we don't wanna get any moisture on it. All of these are Ronstars. This is one of my favorite designs. It's really complex. It has lots of different layers. And for ice dyeing, it's just gorgeous. For irrigation, it's gorgeous. This is a very simple fold of a Ronstar, only using sinew. There's still a lot of play in them. There's still a lot of loose fiber. I actually don't do them like this most of the time, but I think this loose fiber is gonna really show you what happens when it gets wet and how dye travels through it. So each one of these is a Ronstar tied on. The control isn't quite there. There's some different sizes in here, but for the most part, they're all based off this design. And we'll see how each one responds. It's a fantastic design. I love it. That's what this shirt is. And we'll show you how that goes. So I'm gonna remove one of them from here. And because we're gonna do this first one without soda ash, I'm just gonna take raw dye and I'm just gonna sprinkle it on here. Very similar to what you would do with dye under ice and ice dyeing. With one caveat, there is no soda ash in here. And again, this is a lot of dye also. It's amazing the amount of dye that's actually required to dye something, but you will see that this will disappear very quickly. And there's well over a tablespoon, probably 2 tablespoons of dye on there. And that's plenty to do this shirt. And so what you want to do with this technique, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm going to spray this and we're going to see what happens when there's no soda ash. I'm going to turn this down. It's too much water. I tend to run mine on the lowest setting because I really don't want a lot of water in there. We're just gonna get the air out. We're just gonna give it a pass. You're gonna see what really interesting things happen. So you see it hit, you see the water kind of sit there, and it disappears. Doesn't really look like it's having a great time. And I'm just gonna, here's an interesting point. Okay, so this you're seeing right here is the dye starting to leave the surface of the garment and finish in there, and it's clearing off the surface. And so it's flying through that fiber right now. And you start to see the hues of purple. That's nice and wet. I'm just gonna keep working it down. And you will see that it does not take a lot of water to move this dye through. And that's what's beautiful about this. I'm doing this in a bin on a table. Normally I do these in the sink, but it shows you how portable it is. You really don't need a lot. You're not making a ton of mess because you're not blasting it with water. This is intricate stuff and you can really watch it. And so you can really become part of the process, which is why I like it so much. I feel like a lot of me goes really into each one of these because I spend so much time and I feel like I have a relationship with them. So I'm gonna finish this off, just get that dye off the surface. I'm gonna pick it up, we're gonna see, you can see on the dye on the top, it's really kind of coming out. You're starting to see a little bit of like a very light color. And I'm gonna turn it over. And that just shows you it almost made it entirely through with just that little bit of water. It's very similar to what ice dyeing does, right? Very slow. And if I let it sit here even longer, it would continue, gravity would do its thing and push it all the way through. Because we're doing experiments, you can see this one's actually still very strong, very light. You start to see those colors split. So So you've got some purples here, you've got some light blues. That's that dye settling at different rates and falling through the fiber at different rates. I'm gonna turn it over, and I'm just gonna give it a little bit more because I want to actually try to push it all the way through the core. And so that's another fun thing too is, you need to be careful when you pick it up because you don't want to set it back down on the dye, but you can pick it up, you can look at it, you can inspect it. Another good way to do it is if you don't want to touch it, which is a really good way, you can just pick it up on these racks. This is nothing other than a cooling rack, and it allows you to pick it up without moving it and looking at the bottom. That really, really helps because if you think about ice dyeing, you're sitting there, you have no idea what's going on until all the ice is melted. Here you can course correct all the way consistently through the process depending on what you're seeing and what you're reading. This right here was the holy cow moment. And I had soda ash in, but for those that ice dye or liquid dye, these things are a pain to dye because they're so thick. There's so many layers of fiber. And so you see we still got a little bit on the bottom here to do. I'm gonna just push a little bit more water to finish that off. And that's it for this one. We're gonna let it sit. We're gonna show you what it looks like with no soda ash. And we're gonna cure it like this so you can see what happens when you don't have soda ash on it and how much dye sticks or how much it doesn't. And you can see that dye will keep moving off the surface. So it'll get light. I would say it's more stained than anything right now. And almost all of this, I would suspect, is going to come off in our batching. And we're going to stop there. So for the next experiment, we're going to keep as much control as we want. The only thing we're going to change on this one is the introduction of soda ash. And on this one, we're not just going to introduce it like normal. I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to do no soda ash dye on it. We're going to let it settle. When I think it's kind of gotten to the core, I'm going to introduce soda ash, and then we're going to compare that to what happened without soda ash. So here we go, item number 2. Large tool text. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to add dye, no soda ash, straight up. So that was 1 tablespoon basically, maybe a little less. And we got about maybe a little over 2 tablespoons on this one. I'm gonna go maybe just a little heavier than the last one, but anyway, the control will work. You'll see the science. Okay, so very similar to before. I'm gonna check the temperature just so we can document what we're doing. The last one I believe was 98. This one is at 92. So we're gonna be okay with that. Clearly, as you let your water sit, the temperature will come down. It's also part of the magic. It changes as you go. So with this one, we're gonna do something very similar. We're just gonna give it some straight water. No soda ash on here. And I'm just gonna let it do its thing. I generally don't like to see pooling on the top because I don't wanna force it. I want it to do its thing. When there is no soda ash in dye, it acts very differently. You see, it creates like almost like a muddy kind of clay effect, gooey. And on this one, you can actually see the different effect that I put the dye on a little bit heavier, and it's a little bit harder to get to dissolve. It creates a paste kind of. And I'm just kind of reading it. It'll tell you what it wants, what it doesn't want. That's what's so fun about it. You're part of the process. You can control the process. You can drive it. As you'll notice, I'm not using a high-powered spray. I'm just putting as little water as I can because I don't want to blow it off the surface. I don't want to push it. I just want the water to do its thing. A lot of gravity helps with this. Same thing with ice dyeing. I'm just working these last pieces to get that little bit of dye off the top. And I'm going to stop right there. I want to see what's inside, what the bottom looks like. And we'll pick it up. And very similar to the last one, it's really starting to move through. Has not made it all the way through. There's no soda ash, and so that dye is really aggressively moving through this garment. And so what we talked about in the first episode was the impact of soda ash. That's your activation. In this case, it's breaks. And what do I mean by breaks? Again, we talked about the impact of soda ash, that when you introduce it, it's going to lock what's in place when you put it in there. With this form of tie-dyeing, that's true for the most part, although the temperature, because we know it's a thermal reaction, is lower than what we're going to see sometimes with that hot soda ash or warm soda ash. So there will still be a little bit of movement, and that's okay. That's part of the beauty of this art form and this approach. And so right now, I'm going to just take some soda ash, and I'm going to give it a sprinkle of soda ash. And really what we're trying to understand is what happens when you put the soda ash on. Does it lock it? Does it do what we think it's supposed to do? And, you know, don't overthink it. Sometimes you put too much and it'll clump up, but just read it. It'll tell you what it wants to do. And so at this point, I'm very similar to what the Pariah method would do, introducing it after. I'm introducing it right now, really with just water that's going to dissolve the soda ash. And it should start allowing the dye to form that covalent bond. And so what I'm seeing right now is already, on the previous item, you started to see this wash out. It started to get more white. And now that I've added that soda ash, it's allowing the dye that's sitting there to lock in. And so it should stop moving. Now there's still dye in the center of it, because these are really thick, that is very low pH and is probably moving very aggressively. And eventually what's going to happen is the water that I'm introducing that has soda ash in it is going to catch up with that on the inside, and it's going to start locking and locking and locking. And so again, you can't really do too much soda ash. The only thing you can do with too much soda ash is do so much that it's like creating clumps and binding with the fiber on the surface, and that will happen. You don't want that to happen. It won't create the effect you want. And so, other thing as you're doing this technique, there's definitely a front and a back, so don't forget about this back side because you're spraying it from one side. It does make a difference. So I'm just gonna give it one more dose of soda ash, and we'll push this soda ash through, and that's it for this one. We're gonna see what happens. And that's it. Because I'm a little OCD, I'm gonna give it just a little bit more soda ash on the outside because why not? It's not gonna hurt. I'll give it one more sprinkle. And then I may even sprinkle a little bit on the bottom, and that is just gorgeous. You see how that already turned from the other one. So we're already seeing different results just by the introduction of soda ash. I'm gonna leave this one alone. I'm gonna let it right here, and that's it for this one. This is our control number 2. This is late introduction of soda ash. You can tell this is gonna be a good one. All right, well, that's the end of this one. We'll move on to the others.